happening in the heart of Westminster.
And why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law and was deporting people that had crossed illegally. Of course, President Trump enforced the law and improved the law to make sure that and worked with Mexico to have the Remain in Mexico policy. Biden has abandoned federal policy. In fact, he's deliberately trying to let in as many immigrants as possible. More for the Democrats, more is better and less is racist.
Just astonishing. And the statement that Greg Abbott put out is really feisty stuff. He said the federal government has broken the contract between the United States and the state of Texas. And the eye numbers, Greg, are simply eye-watering. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years, Governor Abbott says. That's more than the population of 33 states in the United States. Astonishing numbers. And
Martin, that's just Texas. If you add Arizona and other border states, you know, it's pushing 10 million. By the end of Biden's term, it'll be 11 million. A study by Yale University a few weeks ago, 3 very liberal professors that did the study estimate there's 22 million illegal aliens. So this is a crisis that was created by Biden. It's what he wants. They want unfettered access to the border. They're letting them in. It's a real hardship on the working people of Texas and other border states. And now it's a real hardship on cities that the federal government, as well as the governors of Texas and other states, are sending some of the migrants to those so-called sanctuary cities.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
(9:30) on Thursday, the 8th of February. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber.
Sunak's transgender trouble. Should MPs ever be prevented from expressing their views just because somebody might be upset at what they say?
And police protest powers, new laws at last to crack down on dangerous disorder will allow the police to arrest protesters, wear face coverings and clamber over war memorials. About time too, or are they going too far?
And Labour's Green U-turn, Sir Keir Starmer, is ditching the policy of spending 28 billion quid a year on its green investment plan. Is anyone surprised?
And did you know the British countryside is racist and colonial and a white space? Well, that's according to wildlife charities who warn people from ethnic minorities face structural, experiential, thank you, and cultural barriers to accessing green spaces. What a load of rubbish.
Prime Minister, I'm picturing stiles and fences that you're climbing over there. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is appearing exclusively on GB News People's Forum, an hour-long Q&A on the issues that matter most to you. This is what he has to say about it.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
That's Monday. It's going to be in the northeast, and you need to register to be there. Get your mobile phone out. If you haven't done it already, scan the code on your screen now or go to our website, gbnews.com/PM. There's lots of other interesting things on the website as well. But this is the place you want to go to register your interest to be there on Monday, where Stephen Dixon will be hosting a Q&A with the Prime Minister, and you can ask all the questions. When you're sat watching the telly and you're thinking, why doesn't the BBC ask him this? Why doesn't Channel 4 News ask him this? Well, you do it. You ask him the questions that you want to be answered.
And don't forget to let us know your thoughts on all our talking points today at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's the news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. From the GB Newsroom at 9:33, these are your headlines. Labour is to scale back its flagship Green Prosperity Plan in a major U-turn following months of uncertainty. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer will confirm the changes today, citing increased economic uncertainty since the policy was unveiled in 2021. Labour had planned to spend £28 billion every year on environmental projects. But confusion has grown in recent weeks, with some senior party figures refusing to commit to the pledge, despite Sir Keir saying the money was desperately needed as recently as this week. Protesters who climb on war memorials, carry flares or cover their faces to avoid arrest could face tough penalties under proposed new laws. Demonstrators would also be blocked from citing their right to protest as an excuse for causing major disruption, as the Home Office seeks to crack down on what it calls dangerous disorder. Critics warn the new powers represent a threat to civil liberties, though. Police say a man wanted in connection with a chemical attack in South London had been in a relationship with the 31-year-old victim, which had broken down. The hunt for Abdul Azidi is continuing, and he's believed to be suffering from serious facial injuries. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London just after 11 p.m. last Wednesday. Anyone with information should contact the police. And the Prince of Wales has thanked the public for their kind messages of support following the King's cancer diagnosis. Prince William spoke about his father's diagnosis for the first time as he appeared at an event raising funds for London's air ambulance charity. Hollywood star Tom Cruise was there too, as well as Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta. Striking a lighter tone, the Prince of Wales joked about his family's hospital stays over the past few weeks.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you also for the kind messages of support for Catherine and for my father, especially in recent days. It means a great deal to us all. It's fair to say the past few weeks have had a rather medical focus, so I thought I'd come to an air ambulance function to get away from it all.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. It is 9:35. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, Rishi Sunak is facing calls to apologise after he spoke about the Labour leader's position on trans. It appeared that the mother of the murdered teenager, Brianna Ghey, who was transgender, was in Parliament, although apparently the Prime Minister didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, there's a bit of confusion about whether or not Rishi Sunak did know that Esther Ghey was in the room. Yesterday, Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg gave their reaction. Have a listen.
Did he make a mistake, or is it a storm?
Well, I am appalled by the Leader of the Opposition's abuse of parliamentary procedure. So if you look at paragraph 2130 of Erskine May, it says that members in debate should be brief and directly relate to proceedings and should not be phrased so as to be in any way intimidating or seek to influence debate when referring to people in the galleries. And Mr. Sir Keir Starmer tried to influence the debate by referring to people in the galleries. This is strictly disorderly, and I think Sir Keir should apologise to the House tomorrow.
See, I think, I saw this as it's going out live, and I think it was Keir Starmer who made the political capital out of the issue by naming Brianna Ghey's mother, being there. None of us knew watching at home that she was there. He was the one who threw her into the middle of that storm.
And actually, she wasn't even in the chamber at the time. She came into the chamber after that row had blown up. But my view as well, does this mean, then, that the Prime Minister or any politician, remember, they can effectively say what they want in the Commons because they've got absolute privilege, so they can make allegations of criminality, which they wouldn't be able to possibly make outside the Commons. Does this mean they're going to have to censor what they say, depending on perhaps somebody maybe in the parliamentary estate at the time? Because if so, it's going to make life very, very
not
difficult.
Not be able to say anything.
Well,
because
quite.
everybody has an issue in that room that they feel strongly about. And it does make a bit of a mockery of the idea that you can just speak honestly, freely and have open debate. More than anywhere else, really, as you say, in the country, you have all sorts of privileges of being able to talk freely. I do think it was clumsy of Sunak.
Yeah.
I think he didn't have the acuity, the mental acuity to go off script, because he clearly knew he was going to say that. Now, if he knew that members of Brianna Ghey's family were in the building that day, then he might have thought maybe this isn't the day to make the gag about whether a woman is a woman.
Yeah.
And it would have been sensitive, more sensitive to the family. Her father now, Brianna Ghey's father, Peter Spooner, he's asking for the Prime Minister to apologise.
Yeah. Well, he's not going to. And Kemi Badenoch, who is the Trade Secretary, but she's also got the Equalities Brief, she immediately put out a statement supporting the Prime Minister and saying it was Keir Starmer who had weaponised the issue by bringing Brianna Ghey's mother into the equation. I think, actually, it is one of those classic stories that people get very worked up about on the Westminster, in the Westminster bubble. And people watching this programme, listening to this programme, were thinking, could you just sort out the cost of living crisis?
Exactly.
Could you stop the wretched boats crossing the Channel? And would you tell us why we're having illegal immigration of 750,000 every year? That's what I think people really engage with.
Yeah, I totally agree. What I found really interesting from the footage, and we will show it you again in a minute from yesterday, is Rachel Reeves' face and Angela Rayner's face. We'll show it throughout the morning, because they're laughing along in a way. They can see that this is part of that parliamentary jibing, the jousting about who said what. And as soon as Keir Starmer says the name of Brianna Ghey, you see their faces and they think, oh, this has just taken a different turn.
Shouldn't be laughing now, should we?
Shouldn't be laughing now.
Yeah. So, and we hear that Rishi Sunak, of course, Brianna Ghey's mother was there to see the leader of the opposition. They met, and of course, Keir Starmer quickly put a photograph out. Is he politicising it? Well, look, she's campaigning. You could argue that. She is campaigning, of course, and she's right to... And we're glad she is. But he now says the Prime Minister says he'd like to meet the murdered teenager's family. That's according to one government minister. But he's so far not going to apologise. And I don't think he will.
And actually, I would imagine that Brianna Ghey's mother is really frustrated by this, because what she is now campaigning about has actually nothing to do with trans issues. She's been through that journey with her son transitioning to be considered a daughter, and then she lost her. So what she's campaigning about is social media use. She's campaigning about smartphones for the under-16s. Right. So she won't also want this. She hasn't actually said that she wants neither her or Brianna's father have said that they wish to raise issues about the trans matter and gender identity. So they will be as frustrated about all this as I imagine we are.
And if she does see the Prime Minister, she's not going to be talking about what he said in the Commons chamber. She's going to be talking exactly about that. 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds are too young to have a smartphone.
And watch inappropriate and violent material, which ultimately led to the loss of their child. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. Also, the Prince of Wales has spoken about his father's cancer diagnosis for the first time. He thanked the public last night for their kind messages of support.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you also for the kind messages of support for Catherine and for my father, especially in recent days. It means a great deal to us all. It's fair to say the past few weeks have had a rather medical focus, so I thought I'd come to an air ambulance function to get away from it all.
At the same time, Prince Harry has gone.
Hooray.
He's left the building. He's gone back to LA. He was in the UK for about 24 hours, which is not very green, is it? He's an eco-warrior, and he flew over for 24 hours and flew back again.
Well, and some of the papers today are saying that he put Charles the King on the spot by saying, I'm coming over. He could have talked to him on the phone.
Of course he could.
Talked to him on Zoom. But, of course, he needs to tell his audience in America that pay his wages, that he's still a royal, but actually, I think it's backfired horribly. Charles Ray is the former royal correspondent at The Sun and knows these characters. Charles, morning to you. If Harry thought this was going to be quite good a marketing ploy, look, I appreciate it's his father, and I'm sure he loves his father, although I think he's behaved abominably in the last few months. But if he thought flying in to meet his father was going to be great for his royal reputation and profile, it's somewhat backfired with the King giving him just 30 minutes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you would have thought Harry would have asked his father, look, I'm going to come over, which I think he was right to do, to be perfectly honest, because it is his father. He has been diagnosed with cancer, and I would think any member of a family would want to be at the side of the person. But you'd have thought he could have said to his father, I'm coming over, and he only got 30 minutes. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Why didn't he just, instead of rushing over like that, go to Sandringham, where he could have maybe stayed overnight, at least Sandringham? I know the King's got to rest, and I appreciate that. But, you know, Harry just coming over for 30 minutes, it just seems daft, really.
Charles, I'm interested, though, that you say that you thought Harry should come over. Do you mean as a son or as a royal?
No, as a son. Absolutely as a son, not as a royal. It's nothing to do with being a member of the royal family. I mean, there are lots of families whose a member suffers from some, you know, disease or condition, cancer. And if you hear cancer, other members of that family, you know, want to be by your side to comfort you. But, you know, 30 minutes doesn't seem to be much of a comfort, to be perfectly honest.
And Charles, why did he feel he had to announce it in advance that he was coming over? That's what struck me. He wants the world to know he's doing his duty as a son, or he wants the world to remind people that he's still a member of the royal family, although not a working member of the royal family. He could have just come in, seen his father and left. He probably would have been spotted, but why did he have to announce it?
I don't really know why he had to announce it. I mean, I'm like you, Andrew. I think Andrew has done an awful lot of damage to the royal family with his various attacks and Spare and his Oprah Winfrey and his Netflix documentaries. You know, he comes over. There are two members of the royal family who have had medical procedures. His sister-in-law, the Princess of Wales, and now his father. And you would have thought that as well as seeing his father, he could have seen the Princess of Wales. But unfortunately for him, there is no welcome mat at Adelaide Cottage where the Waleses live. So it's appalling that he has not actually expressed anything at all about his sister-in-law, and that's what makes it so bad. I mean, I was of the opinion, and many people may disagree with me, that if he had come over with Meghan, and I know there would have been the circus and everything else, but if he'd come over with Meghan and brought the children over, the grandchildren, which the King has rarely seen, it would have been a great tonic for the King himself, and I'm sure he would have got more than 30. They would have got more than 30 minutes. And I just thought that would have been a better way of dealing with it, rather than, you know, as you quite rightly say, flying in 1 minute and then flying out the next minute. It was really ridiculous.
Charles, the sense that he's an outcast is underlined by the fact he was not. He didn't stay anywhere on the royal estate. They do have quite a lot of rooms in Buckingham Palace. They've got quite a lot of rooms at Windsor Castle, and yet he spends the night in a hotel in central London.
Yeah. And that underlines the fractious nature of the rift between Harry and the rest of the royal family. You know, there was a lot of people who were suggesting that because we've now got a slimmed-down monarchy and two of them are out because of medical problems, that Harry should come and do some royal duties. Well, hang on a minute. Harry was not sacked by the royal family. He resigned. He didn't want to have anything to do with the royal treadmill. You know, he wanted to go back to America, make his money, live a private life, which clearly he hasn't. But it was a ridiculous suggestion. And all these people who think that this is an olive branch to something that's going to be, you know, sorted out in that family, very, very wrong. I don't see this being ever sorted out. There's too much water going under this bridge.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Charles. Charles Ray there. Yeah, I think that's right. Thank you, Charles. Thanks for joining us this morning. It does show you that even in the event of something like this, if this hasn't brought them together as a family, then possibly nothing will. Right, up next, police are going to be given new powers to throw protesters in jail for wearing face masks or for climbing on war memorials. I'm not that mad on this idea, I can't lie. But let's discuss that in just a moment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The EU rules are trying to choke even that. And I just think, you know, I would join this protest in a heartbeat. And you are right to point out this stuff about them being right-wing. How dare they slate them as right-wing when these are real people whose livelihoods
And
are
remember,
being
a lot of people who work in the farm industry, Malone, get paid very little money.
They get paid.
Agricultural workers are very badly paid.
They get paid nothing, Pierce. And, you know, the profits... I think on Clark's Farm, I read somewhere that I saw that when you sell it like a sheep's skin, it's 30 pence or something.
Right.
And you say, what?
Yeah.
And so you wonder how they can manage that. And I think after a year, Clarkson made a handful of pounds.
He made like 90 quid profit or something.
In a whole year working.
But Carol makes a really good point, though, doesn't she, Nikki, about this idea that we go to the supermarkets, we shop there, we eat our food, we don't often give it a thing. And the farmers have become so frustrated by this idea that they are not respected.
Absolutely. I mean, they're running what are effectively small businesses, often family businesses that are being passed down through generations. They also tend to know the land and the animals better than anyone else in those areas. You know, I'm all for green protests, you know, I'm all for climate change activism, but actually... the only way you can do that is gradually. It's exactly what we've seen with Port Talbot. You know, you can't just go in and say, you're not going to do it anymore this way. You've got to do it this way instead.
The Tata Steel thing.
Yes, exactly. You've got to do it this way instead. You know, lots of farmers are on board with protecting the planet, but they can't do it overnight. You've got to give them time. So they're protesting, you know, they're saying no farmers, no food.
When
well,
you say
can't
you
get any more
support some of
obvious.
these environmental protests, you're not one of these closet supporters of Just Stop Oil, are you?
I'm not a closet supporter. I think I've been quite open about Just Stop Oil.
No.
I don't like all their methods, but I do like the message.
Any of them.
But I do appreciate the message. But sometimes you've got to do difficult things.
What they're asking for now, those protesters, are unrealistic. What these protesters are asking for is not unrealistic.
No.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Very good morning. It's 9:49 on Thursday morning. Do keep your emails coming in this morning, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.com. We are joined in the studio by Conservative MP for Shipley, friend of the channel, Philip Davis. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning. What are you going to do to these horrible protesters?
Yeah, well, look, I think this is good news. I mean, I'm all for the people's right to protest, but you don't need to protest by clambering all over war memorials, which I think is hugely disrespectful to people who have protected our freedoms in the past, including the freedom to protest. And I don't think you need to go around with a balaclava deliberately trying to obscure who you are so that if you commit a criminal offence, you can't be prosecuted by the police. So
you must, of all people, Phil, you will see the hilarious irony now in the fact that you could be arrested for covering up your face when we spent 2 years non-scientifically instructing people to cover up their face.
Yeah, well, I didn't, obviously. I didn't support any of those ludicrous restrictions. But look, the people who are going on these protests in balaclavas and whatnot, we all know what they're about. They're trying to either intimidate other people, they're trying to commit criminal offences and try and get away with it.
Well, they'll just wear a COVID mask. They'll wear a COVID mask, put the hood up and they'll go, I'm scared of COVID, you can't get
it'd be a good opportunity to get shut of that, wouldn't it, as well, to be honest. But look, so I think the police have welcomed these powers. They want to do something about it, and I think the public will welcome. Well, I hope so. I mean,
it's always down to these operational matters, isn't it?
At the end of the day, the police have operational independence, so it's down to them. But the role of Parliament is to give the police the powers and the tools in order to make sure that there's no public disorder. Look, people have the right to protest, but they don't have to do it in that way, and they don't have to impact on other people's freedoms when they're protesting.
Does this mean if people daub in red ink racist on Winston Churchill's statue, they will be breaching the laws?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and they should rightly be punished.
It does seem a little bit bonkers, though, at a time of when people are genuinely struggling and there's a lot of frustration out there, there's a lot of people that feel they've got no money, they can't afford to live the life they want to live, that politicians are preoccupied with telling people they can't stand on a statue. Does it not feel... It just feels a bit satirical. If they've not got more important things to think about?
Well, you know, politicians deal with lots of things at the same time, Bev. I mean, if we could only deal with the most important issue facing the country, no government would ever do anything much, would they? They'd only be focusing on one thing. There's a criminal justice bill going through Parliament. It's an opportunity to make sure you get the criminal justice laws right. So it's the right vehicle for doing that. So I think the government are right to do this.
And this is all inspired by Palestinian protesters, of course.
Yes.
British law being changed here because of people who feel really strongly about an issue in the Middle East. I've got a problem with that.
The laws of the land always change as a result of something happening. They never happen in isolation. They happen because something to deal with a particular issue, and that's what's happening.
Now, Suella Braverman said this week, when she was Home Secretary, she was frustrated because she would have preferred to ban some of these marches, the pro-Palestinian marches, where, of course, we know some people were calling for holy war, a lot of anti-Semitic abuse. Do you think she would have been right to have banned them, to ban a march completely?
I think in some cases, I think where there's a threat of disorder or something happening, I think the police already have those powers. If they feel that there's a real risk of serious disorder, they can already do that. But I think that's probably best left to the police to make those decisions rather than politicians. I would feel rather uncomfortable about politicians deciding what protests can take place and what can't, because I think we can see that there could be a conflict of interest there at some point.
Yeah, the face covering thing, though, it is nonsense. I mean, we're just looking at the pictures there, and I think it's like 1,000 people. They've all got their faces covered up. The police can't arrest 1,000 people for covering up their faces. What? It's just completely unworkable.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it doesn't mean to say it's going to be a panacea, but I think that's not a reason not to give the police these tools if they feel the need to use them.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister, Labour, jumping up and down saying he should apologise because of what he said, mocking the Prime Minister, Starmer, over his inability to identify what a woman is. Brianna Ghey's mother came into the chamber at some point. Should he have to apologise?
He's got absolutely nothing to apologise for. I mean, his opinions and my opinions on biological sex are not changed by what happened to Brianna. That was an absolutely appalling crime. The people who committed it, as far as I'm concerned, should have the key tossed away. Right. And that was absolutely appalling. But that doesn't change anybody's opinion, or shouldn't change anybody's opinion on biological sex. The two things are completely disconnected. And actually, it was really interesting what Starmer said, because Starmer said that Rishi Sunak shouldn't have said that today of all days. In effect, what Starmer was saying is that what you should say should vary depending on who happens to be in the audience. And the public should remember that. Whenever he tells them anything, he's basically saying, I will say something different based on whoever's in the audience. It's absolutely unacceptable.
We can never get enough from you, Phil. Unfortunately, we do have to move on, though. We've come to the end of that first half. Still to come, British countryside is apparently racist. Stay here to find out why.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. We have amber snow warnings in force for some areas through today, and the snow risk will shift further north through the day, but also there's some very heavy rain to come, particularly across the south where there's a rain warning in force. But as that rain bumps into the colder air across parts of North Wales, as well as southern areas of the Pennines, the Peak District, we'll see up to 25 centimetres of snow accumulating. We've got some quite brisk easterly winds, so there's a risk of drifting snow and freezing rain as well through the afternoon. So a very cold feel across many northern areas, clear and dry across the far north. But in the south, even after a dry interlude for a couple of hours this afternoon, heavier rain will arrive once again through the evening, and it will persist through much of the night. So quite a damp night, but temperatures will rise as this southerly wind develops. So much of the snow will quickly start to melt across parts of Wales and the Peak District, pushing that snow risk by tomorrow morning into parts of southern Scotland and northern England, where it will be probably another very cold start to the day on Friday morning. That snow will push further north through the course of Friday, but we could see a further 15 or 20 centimetres accumulating across parts of the Pennines through Friday, as well as southern Scotland, and there's a risk of ice as well. Across the far south, it'll be a much milder day, and we'll start to see that snow melt, but sunshine will be fairly limited with highs of around 10 or 11 degrees. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
We had Grant Shapps on last week. He was talking about how defence spending is now creeping up to 2.25% of GDP. Ben Wallace's predecessor suggested it should be 3%. We hear that we've got the smallest army, I think, since the Napoleonic Wars. Numbers are down. There's a question as to whether we can staff frigates in the Red Sea. Why haven't we sent aircraft carriers? What's your impression of the situation?
Well, I don't think it matters how much you spend, it's how effectively you spend it. And we spend it very ineffectively. We have lots of scandals about defence spending. And I think partly because of the monopoly position of some of our defence suppliers, we don't get good value and we don't get reliability. This latest story in the Telegraph is that HMS Diamond, which is our ship, which is out there defending the Red Sea, doesn't have the capability of firing a missile from the ship to the land, so it can't participate in the attacks on the Houthis. So in order that we can participate in the attacks, we're flying RAF aircraft from Cyprus, which is a very long way away. When I was Defence Secretary, I ordered cruise missiles for our nuclear-powered, but not nuclear-armed submarines. And I think we have 6 or possibly 7 of those. But last autumn, it was reported that 5 of those were out of commission, were not available. We have about 21 aggressive surface ships. So we've got 2 aircraft carriers, then we've got frigates, and we've got destroyers. But at any one time, you can count on about half of those not being available because they're under refit or whatever. So we have a minimal surface fleet now. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we're able to deploy a submarine to the area that can fire cruise missiles. Our 2 aircraft carriers, built at enormous expense, are sitting in Portsmouth.
Which seems to most people ludicrous,
well,
at least with what's going on.
It doesn't seem ludicrous to me.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
AM on Thursday. February, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pierce.
Defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber.
Sunak's transgender trouble. Should MPs be prevented from expressing their views just because someone might be upset at what they say?
And police protest powers. New laws to crack down on dangerous disorder will allow police to arrest protesters who wear face coverings and those who climb on war memorials. Do you support that idea?
And Labour's latest U-turn, Sir Keir Starmer is ditching the flagship policy of spending £28 billion a year on its green investment plan. Is anyone surprised? And will he change his mind again?
And the chemical manhunt, the search for Abdul Azidi enters its 8th day. It's been revealed that he had been in a relationship with the mother who was injured in the attack. Our reporter Ray Addison has the latest.
National Crime Agency warns Azadi he's at serious risk of sepsis as the manhunt enters its 8th day. Police now treating this attack as attempted murder.
And the Prime Minister is to appear exclusively on GB News' People's Forum, an hour-long Q&A on the issues that matter most to you. This is what he thinks about it.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
How could you resist such an invitation? Get your mobile phone out now and scan the QR code on the screen. So you open your camera on your phone, like you would if you were taking a picture of yourself, but hold it up to the TV, scan that code, and there all the details will be so that you can access the event on Monday. If you don't want to do that, go to gbnews.com/PM and you can register your interest there as well. Get in touch with us, let us know what your question would be, and then we will hopefully see you there on Monday.
And of course, we also want to know your thoughts on all our talking points today. Prince Harry, was he right to come here? And those laws, should we be arresting people who wear masks at marches? You email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's the news.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Labour is to scale back its flagship Green Prosperity Plan in a major U-turn following months of uncertainty. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer will confirm the changes today, citing increased economic uncertainty since the policy was unveiled in 2021. Labour had planned to spend £28 billion every year on environmental projects, but confusion has grown in recent weeks, with some senior party figures refusing to commit to the pledge, despite Sir Keir saying the money was desperately needed as recently as this week. The party has, in the past, blamed economic turmoil sparked by Liz Truss's so-called mini-budget for scaling back some aspects of its Green Plan. And the U-turn comes as January is confirmed as the hottest ever on record. The EU's climate service, Copernicus, also says the world experienced a 12-month period of temperatures 1.5 degrees more than pre-industrial levels for the first time. They stress that it doesn't mean the world's in danger of breaching the Paris Agreement yet, but we could be getting closer. Protesters who cover their faces to avoid arrest could face tough penalties under new laws unveiled today. Demonstrators would also be blocked from climbing war memorials or carrying flares, and citing the right to protest will no longer be an excuse for causing major disruption, as the Home Office seeks to crack down on what it calls dangerous disorder. Critics say the new powers represent a threat to civil liberties, but Police Minister Chris Philp says there's no excuse for breaking the law.
See, the government supports the right to protest, but we, don't support members of the public having their day-to-day lives unreasonably disrupted. We don't support war memorials being disrespected, and we don't support people covering their face to get away with committing criminal activity. And that's why we're announcing these changes today, and we're going to make the changes via amendments to the Criminal Justice Bill coming back before Parliament in just a few weeks' time.
Chris Philp speaking there. Now, police say a man wanted in connection with a chemical attack in South London had been in a relationship with a 31-year-old victim, which had broken down. The hunt for Abdul Azidi is continuing, and he's believed to be suffering from serious facial injuries. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London, just after 11 p.m. last Wednesday. Anyone with information should come forward to police. The Prince of Wales has thanked the public for their kind messages of support following the King's cancer diagnosis. Prince William spoke about his father's diagnosis for the first time as he appeared at an event raising funds for London's air ambulance charity. Hollywood star Tom Cruise was there too, as well as Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta. Striking a lighter tone, the Prince of Wales joked about his family's hospital stays over the past few weeks.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you also for the kind messages of support for Catherine and for my father, especially in recent days. It means a great deal to us all. It's fair to say the past few weeks have had a rather medical focus, so I thought I'd come to an air ambulance function to get away from it all.
The Prime Minister is understood to be very keen to meet the family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey. It comes as Rishi Sunak faces calls to apologise for making what Brianna's father described as a dehumanising remark about transgender people in the Commons yesterday. Number 10 insists the comment was a legitimate critique of the Labour leader's stance on what defines a woman. It's understood Mr Sunak and Science Secretary Michelle Donnellan have invited Brianna's mother, Esther, to discuss issues around safety and social media. Record levels of violence against staff in co-op shops will be tackled under a new plan published by the supermarket. The company says attacking shop workers should be a standalone offence as it looks to crack down on more than 300,000 incidents of shoplifting and violence in its shops. That's despite spending more than £200 million on efforts to make its supermarkets safer. Parliament is due to debate an amendment soon that could see attacking retail staff declared an offence. Co-op's managing director says it's imperative MPs don't turn their backs on shop workers. Viagra could reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease in men. That's according to a new study. Experts say the erectile dysfunction drug could inadvertently cut the chances of men developing Alzheimer's by around 18%. They say the findings are encouraging, but more research is needed to examine the wider impacts. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning. Let's see what you've been saying at home. Keir Starmer says Edward completely twisted Sunak's words in PMQs yesterday. Look at all the opposition front benches, all smiling at Sunak's comments. Then once Starmer starts twisting it, they all changed. I noticed that too.
It's a good observation because Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, and Rachel Reeves, the shadow chancellor, were smirking from ear to ear.
Because they knew it was banter and they knew that it was an easy hit by Rishi Sunak. And they could see. And then they realised what Starmer had just said.
So suddenly their faces were set in concrete.
Yeah, Edward said it was solely Starmer that was mischief-making. Shame on him. He's a disgrace. And Brian just said it's politics for you. Sunak could have said his dig at a more appropriate time. It proves he hasn't got a clue about sensitivity. There is some truth to that as well. On a personal level, if he'd known that the late Brianna's family were there, on a personal level, you would surely be sensitive to that. Slightly.
And the fact is, I think it's a failure of intelligence in Number 10 because they probably should have known she was on the parliamentary estate because she was coming in to see Starmer, who then put a photograph out. Was he politicising that meeting? Ooh, I think perhaps he was.
He definitely made some political capital out of that yesterday. And Graham says, I don't think any debate in the House of Commons should be tempered by who may or may not be in the public gallery. If that is the case, then how can business be expected to be conducted efficiently if they have to hold back? Considering Starmer is a possible future Prime Minister, his ongoing confusion over the basic birds and the bees of what a woman is should be highlighted at every opportunity until he demonstrates some clarity.
I think that will be what will linger most after this. It will remind people that Starmer struggles. When asked, does a woman have a cervix? It's not a straightforward question. It is, actually. It's only a woman has a cervix.
Now, and a trans woman. No, sorry. Oh, there we go. This is where we get confusing.
Let's move on.
And a trans man can have a cervix. It doesn't mean he's a biological man.
Exactly. Now, police say the suspected chemical attacker on the run, Abdul Azidi, was in a relationship with his victim.
That's right. This is new footage which shows the Afghan asylum seeker walking across Vauxhall Bridge in London.
Well, he's still at large, of course, on day 8. We're going to speak to our reporter, Ray Addison, who's at New Scotland Yard.
Morning, Ray. What's the latest?
Well, good morning to you both. As you were saying, yes, that's the latest. It's being treated now as a attempted murder investigation. They believe that Azadi had arranged to meet the 31-year-old victim. They believe that they were in a relationship, and they suspect that the reason for the attack could have been the breakdown of that relationship. They also released footage and stills, the latest from that Wednesday night. This is from 11 o'clock, taken on CCTV as he crossed Vauxhall Bridge, then onto Vauxhall Bridge Road and in the direction of Grosvenor Road as well. National Crime Agency getting involved in this. They've had medical experts analyse the latest footage, and they're saying that the look of these injuries would suggest that Azadi has extremely high risk of sepsis and infection setting into that eye, which could prove fatal. Of course, it's been 8 days now since that attack took place, and if Azadi hasn't received any medical treatment for his injuries, he could be in a pretty bad way. We've also heard from friends of the mother as well overnight, that 31-year-old victim. They released their own statement describing her as first and foremost a devoted and loving mother. They said her children are her life, and all she's ever wanted is a safe home for her and her beautiful, kind little girls. Also, those friends thanking the neighbours for their heroic bravery and getting involved, scaring off her attacker and coming to her aid. We've also heard that the Afghan community is getting involved as well. Darius Nasibi from the Afghan and Central Asian Association urging members of the Afghan community to cooperate with police. If they know anything, come forward, and if they don't want to contact them directly themselves, contact that organisation, he says, and they'll pass any information on.
OK, thank you very much, Ray. Ray Edison there on a very rainy, horrible winter's day.
It could be worse. They're getting snow in the north.
It's grim out there today, so just stay where you are and watch us on the telly. We're joined now in the studio by political editor at Daily Express, Sam Lister, and barrister and columnist Sam Fowles. Sam Fowles, let me come to you first, two Sams. You were on last week when this story broke and we discussed the implications of this chemical attack. The interview that we did went huge online. It went very viral, and we've been contemplating why that might have been.
Yeah.
We were talking about... remind us your position on this chemical attack and why it was so pernicious for you.
For me, the issue with this is about toxic masculinity, and it's about how men use chemical attacks to sort of exert their dominance over women, but also over other men. And we've seen in the last few years acid attacks or corrosive substance attacks rise, particularly in London, but also in the north, so that now the UK is one of the hotspots in the world for these attacks. And it really worries me that we haven't grappled with this and we haven't used this attack as an opportunity to grapple with why there's a rise in these CS attacks.
And why do you think there is, Sam? Is it a cultural thing?
I do think it's a cultural thing.
Can you spell out why it's a cultural thing?
I think it's a culture of toxic masculinity that is being promoted.
It's a culture of some Middle Eastern cultures in which, and we have transplanted that very misogynistic, I wouldn't describe it as toxic masculinity, I think of that as being more of a Western issue, but it's supplanting a misogynistic, patriarchal, highly patriarchal view of the sexes, isn't it, from Middle Eastern cultures.
And I agree with you that some Middle Eastern cultures are highly patriarchal and problematic, but actually the vast majority of CS attacks in the UK are committed by native-born white Brits. And so this is a problem that we have to look at. We have to look inward. We've got to look at ourselves and look in the mirror and say that we in Britain have a problem with toxic masculinity, and that is driving these attacks. And I think it's wrong to just sort of to blame people coming in, because that's not what the evidence says.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Let's talk to Sam Lister about the political story that's raging. I can't see why it is raging, but there is pressure on the Prime Minister to apologise for mocking Keir Starmer over his changing views, you might say, on what makes a woman. He clearly didn't know that Brianna Ghey's mother was about to enter the chamber. Should he apologise? Isn't it Keir Starmer who's politicised this?
Well, I think the Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, she put out a series of tweets last night that were very, very strong in their wording. She said, actually, this is Keir Starmer who has weaponised. She says he weaponised this issue. And so she's clearly gone on the attack on this. I think I was sat in the chamber, as I always do for PMQs. It felt to me perhaps Rishi Sunak could have lopped that bit off his list, because actually all he did was open the door to an attack from Keir Starmer. But actually it was Keir Starmer who politicised it, I think. Rishi Sunak was talking about the general issue. Keir Starmer made it very specific and personal. Now, the Prime Minister went on to give a very kind of heartfelt tribute, paid a heartfelt tribute to Brianna Ghey and her family. And I think he was talking about two separate things. He was talking about the wider issue and about Keir Starmer's views on this, not about a personal issue. And so I think it's been conflated by Keir Starmer. But I think Rishi Sunak probably should have seen that would have happened.
Yeah, and also because the Brianna Ghey thing the whole nation has been... It's been the most extraordinary. People have been shocked and appalled
horrified,
that children, effectively, could behave in such a cruel and brutal way to someone because of the fact they didn't like the fact they've changed their gender.
Yeah, and I think also people have been very touched by the fact that Esther Jai, Brianna's mother, has been so compassionate to the family of those killers, and I think actually that really has kind of made people feel very, upset about this.
And Sam, you've written we haven't seen it yet, but you've written a piece for your magazine about the whole trans issue, haven't you?
Yes, forthcoming. And so my view is different on this. I don't think that what Rishi Sunak said was particularly bad because Brianna Jai's mother was in the chamber at the time. I think it was bad because it's really worrying how politicians have used bashing trans people as a political tool. And we know that Brianna Jai's killers joked about whether Brianna would scream like a man or a woman, about sort of implying that Brianna didn't know whether she was a man or a woman. And so for Rishi Sunak to talk in those same terms, in a culture, in a time in which hate crimes against trans people have gone up 186%, is just completely un-Prime Ministerial.
But isn't it a legitimate public area of debate and discussion, Sam, that the leader of the opposition has been struggling to define what is a woman, and has been struggling to define when asked, can only a woman have a cervix? It's not a straightforward question. These are very concerning that he doesn't have a clear-cut view on these issues. They're a very fundamental. It should be very straightforward, I would say.
Well, actually, what Keir Starmer has said on that is that I think he said 99% of women were born with female biology.
Hence the quote from the Prime Minister.
And that's entirely... Actually, it's not quite accurate. It's 99.5%. Right. And trans people are 0.5% of the population. What worries me a lot more is that this is an issue at all. And we have government ministers who are talking about getting down and looking and having an argument about what's inside people's pants. Because we have, for centuries, been perfectly capable of just relating to each other as, well, do you present as a woman? I'm going to treat you as a woman. Do you present as a man? I'm going to treat you as a man. Some people don't believe that. Absolutely fine. You don't have to have a sex change. You just have to leave people alone who have done.
Which is what we did. And so what made this so toxic? I would suggest that what made this so toxic was a very aggressive trans activist lobbying group that have put people who've transitioned, men into women, into sports races. This is where it really burst onto the scene, wasn't it? And into changing rooms. And I don't feel that this came... This what we might describe as this transphobia has suddenly come out of nowhere. I think it's come out of trans activism, attacking J.K. Rowling publicly, attacking anybody that seemed to make any sort of public suggestion that a woman might be a woman. Even if you can recognise, I understand the difference between biology and gender, sex and gender, I get it, but I still have concerns that my freedoms as a woman now, the language around it, particularly in, say, medical spaces, I'm being compromised because of that movement.
But if you track when this actually came into the public eye, it predates the debates about sports, and actually comes from America, from far-right groups in America, because they lost the abortion issue, picking up trans as a sort of wedge issue and really promoting that. And that's when you see the rise in sort of anti-trans stories. But if we if you look at the sports, for example, what really worries me is that we're sort of reducing being a woman to a kind of Victorian 19th century version of femininity. The same people that are terribly worried about sports in rugby, trans women in rugby, for example, don't care at all about little kids playing bigger kids in rugby and getting absolutely destroyed. They don't care at all about many of the issues in sport that make things unfair. They're just using this as a way to bash trans people.
Sam, let's get Sam in here, because this has become an issue, and women-only space is an important issue, which I notice Sam hasn't mentioned. What's your take on this?
Well, just on picking up on Sam's point, obviously the discussion today started off on misogyny. And, you know, the way men treat women and the acid attacks and what have you. I think the transphobia, there's a lot of people throwing around accusations of transphobia, but nobody mentions the rampant misogyny at the heart of this debate. And it is men telling women, know your place. You know, if we want to come in your toilets, we will come in your toilets. If we want to take part in your sport, we will take part in your sport. Women, shut up. And to me, that at the heart of it is misogyny.
And isn't it legitimate for the Prime Minister and other politicians to talk about this?
Absolutely, yeah. And this is not to say, I think everybody who is a trans woman should be treated with respect. That is not the issue. This is the people around the trans women who are deeply politicising this, using it as a means to shut women up. And, you know, women have a right to be heard on this.
Women like Rosie Duffield on the Labour benches have been abused by women on their own side, on the Labour benches, for daring to raise these issues.
And Rosie Duffield has had a terrible time. She's been left out in the cold. Nobody rallied round her because they all saw what happened to her. None of the other women in the party who put themselves forward as big feminists wanted to come to her rescue because they saw what happened when you are a woman and you put your head above the parapet.
And actually, Sam's point about America is really interesting because, of course, in America there's a lot of money to be made and the pharmaceutical companies are making a huge amount of money out of people transitioning. But we've run out of time.
I wanted to come back on
we could have carried on and carried on. Come back and have this again. What a fabulous pair of Sams there.
I know, because we want to talk about Sam's great front-page story today. The door is open to an amazing Boris comeback.
We'll do it in the panel later.
Do it in the panel,
Great story.
Thank you both. Really interesting.
Up next, is immigration to Ireland out of control? More than 1,000 people in Dublin have protested. We're going to be talking about this with Arlene Foster, of course, who is a former First Minister of Northern Ireland.
You don't want to miss the pictures. It's amazing. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Chris, what is the preferred way in which the police go about their business at the moment? There's these two strands of thinking. Evidence-based policing versus bobbies on the beat.
It's very, very difficult. The problem that police have got, basically, is that they're too thinly spread, and it's too much is expected of them. There's a long list, isn't it? Every month we hear police need to do more about this, police need to do more about that, and police do their best. They're overwhelmed with bureaucracy. I mean, when I was a young PC, if I took a shoplifter in, then I'd be in and out within an hour. You take a shoplifter in now, and you're doomed for the rest of your shift for 6 or 7 hours dealing with the bureaucracy. Police want to get back in those communities because community policing is really the core of policing. But such are the demands on their time at the moment and the bureaucracy and the fact that they are struggling now to retain experienced officers. People are hemorrhaging out of the police and new recruits coming in haven't got that experience, and there's a good chance they may not stay anyway. So there's all sorts of problems. And for the Home Secretary to glibly say he wants more done, frankly, clearly shows he's got no understanding of the pressure police are under, and of course the constant criticism that they face across the board. Very rarely do you actually hear of police officers getting praised for acts of bravery or acts of compassion. So there's a problem with morale in the police force, and clearly a problem with the Home Secretary, who needs to get out there and talk to officers on the front line who frankly are struggling. And last night, of course, was a graphic example.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
(10:25) with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Still to come this morning, apparently the countryside is racist. It's a colonial white space. Oh, we're not
You
making it
couldn't
up.
make it up. Well, actually, you could. But first, we're going to talk about more than 1,000 people in Dublin protesting again against immigration.
Yeah, that's right. Look at these pictures. They held placards that read, "Ireland is full and Irish lives matter."
And according to the latest census, 1 in 10 of the population are no longer Irish citizens. So is immigration to Ireland out of control? A bit like in Britain. Joining us in the studio is the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, Baroness Foster. Arlene, this has been, we've talked about this before, this is a slow fuse and it's going to explode.
This has been bubbling away for a little while now, and actually it was Dougie Beattie, our own Dougie Beattie, who first raised this issue, and he did an interview with some residents down on the East Wall, which is an estate in North Dublin, and they were saying to him, look, this is really bad, we can't get our kids to see the doctors. They were getting really agitated at the time. And then it has bubbled away. And actually, we're talking about rural areas. Some of the rural areas in Ireland are really suffering now because the whole nature has changed. You know, these rural little villages and towns. And there's an influx of migrants that come in and they change the whole character of the place where they live. And that's why people are feeling so strongly about it.
It breaks down social cohesion.
Absolutely.
Do you think something's changed in the air, Arlene, that people are now allowed to say that? I hate that sentence. I think we should be allowed to say anything, even if it's offensive. But the fact that we're now talking about it on this channel, other channels still may not talk about it, but I do feel there's something in the air that even the more mainstream, more establishment channels now are looking at pictures like this and saying perhaps mass immigration over a very short space of time is fundamentally changing culture, and that's not good.
No, it's not good, and it's not good for the people that come in, and it's not good for the people who are already living there. And Ireland always prides itself as the country of 100,000 welcomes, you know, and we welcome everybody, and we love to have people come and visit us. And that's why you see a resistance from the politicians in all of this, and a lot of the shouting was aimed at Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach, and interestingly, Sinn Féin.
Right.
Now, as you know, Sinn Féin have been climbing all the times in the polls in the Republic of Ireland. There was a poll out at the weekend that shows that they have dropped to their lowest point in 3 years. And it's to do with immigration.
Because they've been encouraging it.
They have. They are pro-immigration. They say they welcome everybody. And because of that, before this, they were putting themselves around as the champions of the working class, and we're there for you, and we'll sort it all out, and we're a good socialist. And now ordinary people are turning on Sinn Féin and saying, sorry, you're traitors. That's what they said in the actual, you are traitors.
For the ordinary working class, the migrants take their jobs, take their houses, school spaces, the same issues we have here.
Yes, yes. And you'll remember this came to a head in Dublin when a child was stabbed.
I do.
And for a long time, nobody would actually say it was an immigrant that did that.
Which is shameful.
Which is actually shameful. It's a bit like this awful case of throwing acid in Clapham. For a while, people didn't want to say that it was actually an illegal immigrant.
And now it's a really big part of the story because the wretched man, they tried to deport him twice and failed. And then he became a Christian.
Yeah, and I think there's a really big issue around all of that. And I mean, the Church is saying, the Church of England is saying that it's up to the Home Office to determine whether they are really a Christian or, well, sorry, you can't do that. If you are actually facilitating this, you have to not be naive, but actually challenge these people.
We haven't got much time. We've talked about the Prime Minister in the programme and the pressure he's under over what he said.
Yes, sure.
Brianna Jai's mum in the Parliament. Now, Toy, there's a big debate in the House of Lords, which you're taking part in.
Yes, there's a private member's bill brought forward by a Liberal Democrat MP or peer around conversion therapy and the banning of conversion therapy. And I think for a lot of us, the difficulty is it's so vague and includes because it's actually modelled on a law from Australia and Victoria in Australia. And if it's the same as that, it will include prayer. So if you're asking somebody to repent of their sins, that actually could be caught by this law. So it's an incredibly vague bill, and I think there's 49 people wanting to speak tomorrow. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, but I think it's really important that we have a debate on the issue. And I know the tragic case of Brianna Gray has happened, and it's obviously in the spotlight again because of what happened yesterday. But we must focus on the actual what's in the bill as opposed to what has happened, because that was a case of hate.
Yes.
It was not about conversion therapy.
Yeah.
It was actually about hate and the evilness of the people that carried it out. And I think there's a real issue there that we have to debate tomorrow.
Just briefly, the worry is that mums and dads talking to their kids who might say they want to change it could be caught in this conversion therapy.
Absolutely. If the child says, I want to get puberty blockers, I want to have a mastectomy if they're a girl wanting to become a man, then if the parents say, no, well, let's talk about this, they could be caught because they're not affirming what that child wants.
Right.
And I mean, that leads to physical harm, it leads to mental health issues. And so there are real issues that we need to talk about, and I hope we talk about them tomorroar.
Yeah, well,
and it just leads to parents being disempowered yet again and again and again.
Potentially criminalised in their own home.
Exactly.
Right, Arlene, good to see you. As always, fascinating. Now, still to come. Find out who Rishi Sunak still speaks to and wouldn't rule out bringing into his cabinet. It's a former Prime Minister and a friend of this channel. First, though,
with big hair.
Sophia Wensler has your news.
Thanks, Bev. It's 10:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. First is some breaking news. Armed police executed 2 warrants in Newcastle in the early hours of this morning at addresses associated with the chemical attack suspect Abdullah Zaidi. That's including at his place of work. It's understood no arrests have been made. That says the hunt for Zaidi is continuing. He's believed to be suffering from serious facial injuries. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London just after 11 p.m. last Wednesday. Anyone with information should contact the police. Protesters who cover their faces to avoid arrest could face tough penalties under new laws unveiled today. Demonstrators would also be blocked from climbing war memorials or carrying flares, and citing the right to protest will no longer be an excuse for causing major disruption, as the Home Office seeks to crack down on what it calls dangerous disorder. Critics say the new powers represent a threat to civil liberties, but Police Minister Chris Philps says there's no excuse for breaking the law. Labour is to scale back its flagship Green Prosperity Plan in a major U-turn following months of uncertainty. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer will confirm the changes today, citing increased economic uncertainty since the policy was unveiled in 2021. Labour had planned to spend £28 billion every year on environmental projects. The Prince of Wales has thanked the public for their kind messages of support following the King's cancer diagnosis. Hollywood star Tom Cruise and Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta joined him at an event raising funds for London's air ambulance charity. Striking a lighter tone, the Prince joked about his family's hospital stays over the past few weeks.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you also for the kind messages of support for Catherine and for my father, especially in recent days. It means a great deal to us all. It's fair to say the past few weeks have had a rather medical focus. So I thought I'd come to an air ambulance function to get away from it all.
And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2633 and €1.1714. The price of gold is £1,611 and 35 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,647 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Later this hour, have you ever noticed that the countryside is racist, a white space? Yeah, do you know what? I genuinely have noticed that it is predominantly...
I think it's a predominantly green space. Fields, trees, that's what I think the countryside is. Not a white space or a black space, a bit of brown space, soil.
Yeah, listen, if you live in London, as we do, and you go to Devon or Dorset or Wales, it is quite noticeably less ethnically diverse. But does that mean that it is fundamentally racist and that there are barriers to people of colour or different ethnicity going there? I don't think so.
It's ridiculous.
Well, wildlife charities are saying that it's a problem. First, though, a new GB News series.
Why can't they just stick to looking after wildlife?
I do love it when you get exasperated.
Oh, despair at it.
Right, GB News series, Innovation Britain. We're looking at the success of British manufacturing around the country. Celebration time, here you go.
We're here at Bowyer Engineering in Andover in the southwest of England. They take on lots of apprentices every single year. Sharon, why are apprenticeships important to Bowyer?
They're important to Bowyer, but they're important to all small manufacturing businesses everywhere, really. We've got a lack of real skills coming into the manufacturing business, and this allows us to get the apprentices in from the colleges. We can train them up, we work really closely with them, and we can keep the skills that we teach them.
And you're lucky enough to manage the apprentices here at Bowyer, Sharon.
Yeah.
What does that apprenticeship scheme actually look like?
Okay, it's generally a 3 or 4 year course. We take the apprentices from the local colleges. We work really closely with them. Their assessors come out in 3 or 4 month periods. They assess them, we work really closely. We get them up, they get them up to the standard that they should be to complete their apprenticeships. And we teach them all we can here, essential skills for the small businesses that we need. And then hopefully they stay with us and carry on. And we've made brilliant machinists out of them. The local colleges are heavily funded by the government levy. So they get a lot of money in. So I think because of that, the colleges are putting in more effort into getting apprenticeships out there to the local businesses because they're funded. So we are only reaping the benefits for that.
It's changing attitudes to apprenticeships here in Andover.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yep.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:41. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Malone's here talking already. Carol Malone. She doesn't
You're
wait to be
stuttering as
introduced.
well over
Doesn't
autocue.
wait to be introduced. The author and broadcaster,
He's
Nicky
only trying
Hodgson,
to
who
cover.
does wait to be
He's
introduced.
trying to cover the fact he was stuttering
He
over
can't
that
criticise
autocue
you,
there.
honestly. Right, what are we talking about, ladies? Should we talk about the fact that countryside
we talking about that?
is racist? Who wants to kick this one off? Nikki, go for it.
Well, I find this so fascinating. As somebody who's from a city surrounded by countryside...
Which one?
I'm from Wakefield, in West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So a place where there's lots of countryside accessible, but not lots of people from ethnic minorities access it, I would say, thinking about the demographic of Yorkshire and how many
Why do you think
Asian
they
friends
don't?
we have. That I find really fascinating. I don't know what that's to do with. I was thinking about this as well, because my husband's Asian, and... a few weeks ago, we went to the Cotswolds and we went into a pub and he got a very weird look from lots of people in the pub.
Really?
Yes. And I was trying to discern, is it because we're just outsiders in general or is there a race element to it? And he always says that he'll go into some pubs and he thinks, yeah, they're thinking, oh, he's Asian and they don't really want him here. And that still prevails. And Cotswolds is just an example. We find that everywhere we go. If you go to a very local pub, if you know what I mean, where...
But that could be because you are outsiders.
Right, exactly. So it's difficult to discern sometimes. I mean, the thing is, isn't the bottom line that when immigrants came to our cities, they came to our cities, they didn't move into the countryside. Yeah. So what's happened is a kind of natural barrier has been kind of, initially put up, and then it's been perpetuated. Maybe we haven't done enough to get people into green spaces.
It's about economics, isn't it? It's about the fact that people of ethnic minorities are more likely to be in lower paid jobs. Those lower paid jobs tend to be in urban environments,
although
cities.
There are lots of those in the countryside as well, running shops and doing cleaning and stuff like that. So, what is that barrier?
You spend a lot of time in Dorset. Have you noticed it? Does it feel like a white enclave?
Yes, I suppose it does. But I remember growing up in the northeast, I didn't see a black person until I was 14, because the north of England is a really long way to come, especially Newcastle. If you arrive in London, in the capital city, and you're looking for work, in Newcastle we have a massive Chinese community. I mean, I grew up knowing. I remember there was a fear of people whose skin was of a different colour. It's not. People would say that is racism. Now they'd class it as racism. It wasn't. It was a fear of the unknown.
Of course.
And I remember my dad was a member of a working men's club, and we had a black guy would come in there, and my dad, I remember him looking at him, and then someone attacked him. Someone verbally attacked this guy in the club.
The black guy?
Yeah, because of his colour. And the whole of the club, I'm telling you, because this guy was a regular, rounded on this person who was a stranger and literally took him to the car park and gave him a bit of a battering, which I was really proud of them for that, because they were a bit unsure. And then it's just about getting to know. It's about acceptance, and once you do, it's fine. We should have moved on a long way since then. But I think the story we have. But this story, to say the countryside is racist and colonial, is nonsense. It's just nonsense.
I'm really struggling with it. I look at the countryside. It's green. That's what the countryside is. Yeah. It's green, it's rural, there are haystacks, there are fields. It is not a white-only enclave. I mean, if people of ethnicity choose not to go into the countryside, whose fault is that?
But it's two things, isn't it? If you've been brought up in a family of several generations, maybe of ethnic minority family, and you've never gone because you initially, maybe 50 years ago, felt you couldn't go, then generationally you probably won't do it because you haven't set that trend in your family.
Exactly. Yes.
But at the same time, I mean, if I go,
but that's
being from the north, and maybe Carol, you feel the same. But going to the south as a northerner is a huge thing when you're young.
Completely.
You really feel like you're a proper outsider.
You really
want
do.
you there. You're kind of from the poor north and all this.
Do you think that's because you thought the people in the south will think we're posher than you?
Yeah, always. And they always have more money than us because of the way the house prices worked. I remember one time going on holiday to Cornwall with my family and saying to Mum when I was about 9 years old, Mum, can we move down south? That was the phrase. And she said, no, love, people like us farmers can't move down south. And then it's a perpetuating
you
thing.
See, and there will be some very urban areas which are pretty much monocultures that me as a white woman, there will be cafes in some parts of Edgware Road that I would be deemed to be
where you get the
unusual.
smell of the
sheet pipe. But I guess the difference is it's nicer
right.
to access the countryside. Everybody needs green space. The benefits of mental health and physical health are untold, right? So that's kind of why we have to sort it out.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, there might be some ethnic minorities, people going, we're not that bothered about going and walking on a windy day, thank you, on a beach. You can keep it to yourself and stay here in the city. Right, we've got to move on, ladies. But up next, that includes you. Rishi Sunak has refused to apologise for his trans jibe at Sir Keir Starmer yesterday during PMQs. Does he need to? We're going to be debating that next with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right.
Growth.
And then people, you know, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, you know, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government, way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
And they're still in the studio. That's Carol Malone and the author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson, and they're going to talk about Harry.
We are going to talk about Harry. He was on his way home, actually.
I think he's arrived, hasn't he?
Well, he came and he went. He's been in the country 26 hours, which is astonishing. But there's a very interesting piece in your paper today, Piers, from Robert Jobson, who appears on GB News, saying that Charles was not too happy about it because Harry just kind of invited himself, unbidden. And there was Charles the other day, desperate to get off to Norfolk for a bit of R&R, and he had to hang about for Harry to come and see him. And Robert Jobson said, you know, this visit ended up being not the 45-minute visit we're all being told about, 30 minutes, says Robert. And it was very perfunctory. Now, you know, I'm thinking, why did he fly in for a 35-minute meeting? And God forgive me, and I said this on television yesterday, and it seems to be coming to pass today, that it seems to me that he's flown in as a bit of a PR exercise.
Well, exactly what I said at the beginning.
He wasn't invited.
No.
If he hadn't come, all of American telly would have been saying, why haven't you flown to your father's bedside?
And he needs to go to remind people that he's a royal.
Exactly, and he's come back and he'll be on every American TV station in the next 48 hours saying he was at his father's bedside and all the rest of it. So, to me, he's just come over for more fodder for Netflix or however. But the interesting thing is, he didn't stay, he wasn't offered accommodation at Clarence House. He stayed in a hotel with his security detail, which means that the rest of the royal family are saying there's no rapprochement here, there's no getting together. All this tosh yesterday about this is the sign of them all getting back together. It's no workload.
Could it be PR, or is he just an emotional flibbity-gibbet who sort of flips around if there's a bit of drama to bask in, do you think?
Well, I think you've got to think of him as a young man whose dad is poorly. That's how I thought about it, right? And no matter what has happened between you and your family members, if somebody is seriously ill, a lot of it is put to the side, isn't it? It just is. And it often changes your perception of, you know, arguments that you've had. It might make you think twice about the time you've got left to put things right. So there's that aspect of it. And the timing absolutely sucks. I don't know why somebody didn't advise him to just wait. Come to the country quietly next week, stay for a couple of weeks.
And I'll tell you why, Nikki, because I think Malone's right, because it was more about PR.
Well, exactly.
Because somebody would have said...
You say that it's a family thing, you know. When you have a dad who's 75, you know medical things, bad things, may well befall him. You do not wait until he's had a cancer diagnosis to come and visit. To me, this is, you know, I keep on hearing, oh, it's family, you put everything to one side. How can you put to one side the fact that this man, Harry, trashed his family for 3 years for multi-millions and now thinks he can fly back in here and people are going to go, oh, well, you know, it's family, it's good. No!
But I just think that's growing up. People, as children, we say terrible things to our parents. We make horrific mistakes with them. I've done it with my own parents. And then hopefully you get some time to put it right, which I have had. But, you know, he's probably...
You couldn't put much right in half an hour.
You're not monarchy.
You're not
royal, you can't.
No, of course, but the important bit here as well is that Meghan didn't appear because Meghan's PR campaign is all about preserving her American celebrity status, and if she comes here, she'll get trashed. So the fact that she didn't accompany
this is the woman who didn't go and visit her own father at his bedside. So I don't think it's about that. I think she just doesn't care very much.
I agree with... But she's about self-preservation. I understand why she wouldn't appear. But I just think whoever is advising Harry, please give him some better advice, because it was done terribly. If you come to stay with your dad, do it in a different way.
You know he doesn't listen to anybody, and that's part of the problem. They have a whole host of advisors who he keeps sacking.
Because what he could have done, he could have gone to Sandringham discreetly.
Right, discreetly, with none of us knowing.
And none of us knowing, but instead he announces before he's even on the plane he's on his way to his father. That's why it's a PR gimmick.
What they do, and they've done it repeatedly, their Netflix documentaries, when they manage to get themselves into these positions where they become the victim. They're very good at this victimhood mentality. They play that role brilliantly. So how does he play this out now? Well, I went to see my father, and he wouldn't even make more than half an hour for me. That's how this plays out in their mind.
The public are buying that anymore? I think the American public are wise to them now, and I think people certainly here are wise to them. That they don't believe the victim stuff anymore. They see what he's doing. They see the manipulation.
And also, don't you think, I'm convinced the king no longer trusts his son.
Oh, I think that's exactly why he wasn't invited to stay.
And Queen Camilla was not there.
Sad. And
he did not want to be anywhere near.
Well, it's not sad. He's brought this upon himself. He made a decision to sell his family down the river for money, to try and trash the institution of the monarchy, but not the institution, his own family as well. Called them racists and way much worse.
I know, but I just think as a child, sometimes you do say terrible things to your parents.
He's not a child, he's 40! He's 40 years old.
But he's Carol, that's
he's got that terribly noisy inner child. And we need to...
No mistake, he was just doing it to make money.
Right, don't go anywhere. We're going to be discussing the case of an actress who was working for Disney. She's now firing them. She's suing them because they fired her because of a social media post. Yep, that old chestnut again. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. We have amber snow warnings in force for some areas through today, and the snow risk will shift further north through the day, but also there's some very heavy rain to come, particularly across the south where there's a rain warning in force. But as that rain bumps into the colder air across parts of North Wales, as well as southern areas of the Pennines, the Peak District, we'll see up to 25 centimetres of snow accumulating. We've got some quite brisk easterly winds, so there's a risk of drifting snow and freezing rain as well through the afternoon. So a very cold feel across many northern areas, clear and dry across the far north. But in the south, even after a dry interlude for a couple of hours this afternoon, heavier rain will arrive once again through the evening, and it will persist through much of the night. So quite a damp night, but temperatures will rise as this southerly wind develops. So much of the snow will quickly start to melt across parts of Wales and the Peak District, pushing that snow risk by tomorrow morning into parts of southern Scotland and northern England, where it will be probably another very cold start to the day on Friday morning. That snow will push further north through the course of Friday, but we could see a further 15 or 20 centimetres accumulating across parts of the Pennines through Friday, as well as southern Scotland, and there's a risk of ice as well. Across the far south, it'll be a much milder day, and we'll start to see that snow melt, but sunshine will be fairly limited with highs of around 10 or 11 degrees. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, coming up, has the Prime Minister opened the door to a comeback for one certain Boris Johnson? I flipping hope so, because the Tories badly need him.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
So a new poll has revealed that Gen Z or Gen Z, I don't know how I'm supposed to say it, and British boys and men are more likely to believe that feminism has done more harm than good when compared with older respondents. So the polling also found that a quarter of UK males aged 16 to 29 believe it's harder to be a man than a woman, with 1 in 5 looking favourably upon controversial influencer Andrew Tate. 37% of them also agree that the phrase toxic masculinity is unhelpful. So, with Gen Z boys increasingly holding this view, has feminism done more harm than good? Let me know your thoughts. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet me @gbnews, and make sure you take part in our poll. But I'll bring you those results shortly. Going head-to-head on this tonight, our author and commentator Anna May Mangan and YouTuber and social media influencer Pearl Davies. Both of you, thank you very much. Pearl, I'll start with you. Has feminism done more harm than good, especially when it comes to these Gen Z boys?
Be women that want to complain that we're not given equal opportunity when really women are given more opportunity than men. And so, yeah, I would say feminism is a hate group and it's a bunch of crybaby women.
Anna, would you like to come back to that? Crybaby women feminism, apparently.
So we've got a right lad with us tonight with Pearl and her opinions, haven't we? How could it possibly do harm? Pearl wouldn't do. I hope you vote. I assume you do. I hope you're not chained to the kitchen sink at home. I'm not sure if you've got a job, so I don't know very much about you, but you're probably, if there's a bloke doing the same thing as you, you're probably earning less than him. So of course feminism is something that it got us the vote in the first place, and it's still doing a power of good. It's just whingy men, and actually I changed that. They're lads, they're not men.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
11 a.m. on Thursday, the 8th of February. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber.
Yeah.
Sunak's transgender troubles. Should MPs ever be prevented from expressing their views just because somebody in the room might be upset at what they say?
And police protest powers, new laws to crack down on dangerous disorder will allow the police to arrest protesters who wear face masks. Will they use them? Our political correspondent, Olivia Rutley, she's got more.
The Home Secretary has put forward some radical amendments to the laws around protest, but will they really be enforceable? Find out more with me very soon.
And Labour's green U-turn. Sir Keir Starmer is ditching the policy of spending £28 billion a year on its green investment plan. Are you surprised?
And top job for Boris, Rishi Sunak has opened the door to the possibility of a comeback for the blonde bombshell. Is he going to come back into government?
And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is to appear exclusively on GB News People's Forum. It's an hour-long Q&A. It's going to be on Monday. This is what he thinks about it.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday, the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
That's on Monday. It's in the northeast. It's going to be going out live on GB News. I believe it's 8 o'clock in the evening. If you want to be there, your chances of getting there are becoming less and less likely by the minute because the time is ticking and people are applying all the time. Get your phone out, scan this QR code now or go to gbnews.com/PM. Stephen Dixon will be there to take the questions, to chair those Q&As. Go on, be there. Let us know what it's like. We won't be there. We'll be watching it on the TV.
We'll be watching
won't
it or listening to it on the radio, of course. And don't forget, we want to hear your views on what we've been talking about today. You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here is the latest headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, Bev, thank you. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. Armed police executed 2 warrants in Newcastle in the early hours of this morning at addresses associated with the chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi, including his place of work. It's understood no arrests were made as the hunt for Azidi continues. He's believed to be suffering from severe facial injuries, which could be life-threatening if left untreated. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London just after 11 p.m. last Wednesday. Anyone with information should contact the police. Protesters who cover their faces to avoid arrest could face tough penalties under new laws unveiled today. Demonstrators would also be blocked from climbing war memorials or carrying flares, and citing the right to protest will no longer be an excuse for causing major disruption as the Home Office seeks to crack down on what it calls dangerous disorder. Critics say the new powers represent a threat to civil liberties, but Police Minister Chris Phil says there's no excuse for breaking the law.
See, the government supports the right to protest, but we, don't support members of the public having their day-to-day lives unreasonably disrupted. We don't support war memorials being disrespected, and we don't support people covering their face to get away with committing criminal activity. And that's why we're announcing these changes today, and we're going to make the changes via amendments to the Criminal Justice Bill coming back before Parliament in just a few weeks' time.
Now, Labour is to scale back its flagship Green Prosperity Plan in a major U-turn following months of uncertainty. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer will confirm the changes today, citing increased economic uncertainty since the policy was unveiled in 2021. Labour had planned to spend £28 billion every year on environmental projects. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said it was further evidence of the Labour leader's record of flip-flopping on major issues. And the U-turn comes as January is confirmed as the hottest ever on record. The EU's climate service, Copernicus, also says the world's experienced a 12-month period of temperatures 1.5 degrees more than pre-industrial levels, and that's for the first time. They stress that it doesn't mean the world's in danger of breaching the Paris Agreement yet, but we could be getting closer. The Prime Minister is understood to be very keen to meet the family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey. It comes as Rishi Sunak faces calls to apologise for making what Brianna's father described as a dehumanising remark in the Commons about transgender people. Commons leader Penny Mordaunt says the Prime Minister should reflect on his words, but Number 10 insists the comment was a legitimate critique of the Labour leader's stance on what defines a woman. The Prince of Wales has thanked the public for their kind messages of support following the King's cancer diagnosis. Prince William spoke about his father's diagnosis for the first time as he appeared at an event raising funds for London's air ambulance charity. Hollywood star Tom Cruise was there too, as well as Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta. Striking a lighter tone, the Prince of Wales joked about his family's hospital stays over the past few weeks.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you also for the kind messages of support for Catherine and for my father, especially in recent days. It means a great deal to us all. It's fair to say the past few weeks have had a rather medical focus, so I thought I'd come to an air ambulance function to get away from it all.
Record levels of violence against staff in co-op shops will be tackled under a new plan published by the supermarket. The company says attacking shop workers should be a standalone offence as it looks to crack down on more than 300,000 incidents of shoplifting and violence in its shops. That's despite spending more than £200 million on efforts to make its supermarkets safer. Parliament is due to debate an amendment soon that could see attacking retail staff declared an offence. Co-op's managing director says it's imperative MPs don't turn their backs on shop workers. And Viagra could reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease in men. That's according to a new study. Experts say the erectile dysfunction drug could inadvertently cut the chances of men developing Alzheimer's by around 18%. They say the findings are encouraging, but more research is needed to examine the wider impacts. And for all the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
What is going on at that co-op? Why are they behaving like mob rule?
It's awful. My local co-op in a very nice area of West London that I'm fortunate enough to live in. I went in there yesterday and I said to the guys, got this massive perspex screen, not like the little COVID pointless things, but like a big wall behind the till. And I said, is this permanent now? And he said, we have to because of shoplifting. He said, we have between £500 and £1,000 a day of stock is taken. I said, what do you mean? Like, are they putting it furtively under their coat? He said, oh no, they just come in, they just take what they want off the shelves, they take bottles of wine out of the fridge. He said, if we don't have this, they'll take all the cigarettes. And I said, what do you do about it? And he said, nothing. Co-op has said there's nothing they can do about it. And he said, we ring the police and they give us a crime reference number, but they don't ever come in, they won't come round, they're not going to arrest anybody. He said, so pretty much we've given up.
Shoplifting,
we've given up?
There is a shoplifting epidemic, but the fact is that eventually will close that co-op down because they can't sustain those sort of losses, even though they're a big company. Because the shop will have to break even, at very least.
And they'll have to put their insurance costs up, and the insurance companies will pass those costs on to us.
And also, they're not going to be able to keep staff because it's going to be a very intimidating atmosphere to work in.
It's awful. Just let us know at home, because I think it's really interesting, that story that was in the bulletin then, and it sparked the debate between us, and no doubt it's giving you thoughts at home of what you've seen. GB Views at gbnews.com is the email. Now,
protesters who climb on war memorials, and frankly, we should say who walk into co-op and behave like that, and cover their faces at big demonstrations, could face jail under new proposed laws, while people who scale national monuments, such as a war memorial, could face a 3-month prison sentence and a £1,000 fine.
So let's hear now from our Westminster, our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, just explain to us how the law is being changed, who might also be upset about this.
Well, Bev, essentially what's happening is the Home Secretary is tabling some amendments to the Criminal Justice Bill, which is going through the House of Commons at the moment. And what those amendments would do is basically strengthen up the legislation around protests. So there are 3 different measures that the Home Secretary would like to take. One of them is banning face masks and face coverings at protests. Under these laws, anyone found with a face covering at a protest who refused to take it off would be eligible for a £1,000 fine and up to a month in prison. Climbing on war memorials would also be made illegal under these new laws. That's something which has lots of public backing, actually. And finally, bringing fireworks and flares to a protest, that's something that we've seen particularly in the pro-Palestine events of recent weeks, would be made illegal too. Now, this all sounds pretty radical, pretty sweeping, as though the government is really planning a proper crackdown on these protests. But there are quite a few more hurdles the government is going to have to get over before we actually get into a position where people are being arrested for wearing face masks. Firstly, of course, there is the procedure of the bill through Parliament. Now, last year, the government brought in the Public Order Act, which also had a few measures to try and crack down on protests. And they found that in the House of Lords, there was a lot of disquiet about the bill. They had lots of peers on the right and the left of the House of Lords felt that this got too close to a crackdown on free speech and got too far to infringing on the right to protest in general. So I think what we can expect to see is this bill to be amended, these amendments to be amended actually, so parliamentary ping pong as they call it, when the bill gets to the Lords from civil liberties campaigners. The other issue which I've heard raised among MPs is how practical is this law? If you look at those photos of some of those pro-Palestine protests, face masks are a really, really common occurrence. I mean, probably about I'm estimating here, 1 in 5, maybe 1 in 10 people are wearing some sort of scarf or face covering, etc. These protests are already incredibly expensive for the Met Police. The Met Police estimate that they've spent about £27 million so far on policing these protests. And trying to pick out individuals wearing face masks in crowds of sort of up to 100,000 will be very, very difficult, time-consuming and expensive for the Met Police. So these sound like bold ideas from the government, but whether we will actually get to a stage where they are implemented is another question.
Very interesting. That's Olivia Utley in Westminster for us. That's the point. Can it be practical policing? It's going to put a huge pressure on the police, isn't it?
And if it's not for practical reasons, then why are the government doing this now? To appear what? Tough?
Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Oh, no, that was Tony Blair.
No, not much difference, is there? Right, the Prime Minister has refused to apologise over his trans jibe at PMQs yesterday, while the mother of murdered trans teen Brianna Ghey was in Parliament. Let's listen what happened.
Everyone, I was completely shocked by Brianna's case. To have your child taken from you in such awful circumstances is almost impossible to come to terms with. And for Brianna's mum to talk with such empathy and compassion about that, I thought was inspiring, and it showed the very best of humanity. I have nothing but the most heartfelt sympathy for her entire family and friends. But to use that tragedy to detract from the very separate and clear point I was making about Keir Starmer's proven track record of multiple U-turns on major policies because he doesn't have a plan, I think is both sad and wrong, and it demonstrates the worst of politics.
The father has demanded an apology from you, so will you honour that?
If you look at what I said, I was very clear talking about Keir Starmer's proven track record of U-turns on major policies because he doesn't have a plan. A point only proven by today's reports that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer are apparently planning to reverse on their signature economic green spending policy. That just demonstrates the point I was making. He's someone who has just consistently changed his mind on a whole range of major things, and I think that is an absolutely legitimate thing to point out, and it demonstrates that he doesn't have a plan for the country.
I want to ask about your dental recovery plan announced yesterday. Under those plans, can you guarantee that everybody will now have access to an NHS dentist wherever they live?
Well, it hasn't been easy enough for people to access NHS dentistry over the past couple of years, particularly as a result of the impact of the pandemic, which hit dentistry services harder than almost anything else because they were the hardest things to continue in any form during COVID. The announcements this week will make a significant difference, and quickly. 2.5 million more NHS appointments to get levels back up to where they were pre-COVID, attracting dentists to work in underserved areas. This will be particularly valuable in areas like the southwest, where I am today, mobile vans going into underserved communities as well. Taken together, it's a very significant new investment in dentistry so that everyone can get the access that they need.
But is there no guarantee that...
Right, you can see how relieved he was. You can see how relieved he was to start talking about dentists.
Yeah.
Apologies, viewers and listeners, because we didn't realise that's just literally just landed hot off the press. We thought we were going to look back at Westminster. That's him this morning, swinging on a giant hook and refusing to apologise, but also refusing to just say, no, I won't apologise. Just grow a pair.
What do you... I mean, if I was him, I'd have said, I've in no way wish to offend the family of Brianna Ghey. I do not feel I have anything to apologise for.
You've never been that diplomatic.
Well, because he's the Prime Minister, you have to be diplomatic. But he should have said no, because it looks like he's evasive. When are you going to apologise? And he answers a different question.
Yes. Just say...
And all politicians are guilty of the same, I'm afraid.
If you don't believe in anything, you fall for everything. That's the problem. And the thing is, I just feel like he should have said... No, I am not going to apologise because I am the Prime Minister and it was the House of Commons. And if we go down the route of forever policing what we say because we're going to offend somebody in the room, then we lose free speech in this country. There's where the nation would applaud him. He can say that and also say it is awful what happened to this family. And I will talk to Brianna Ghey's mother about her concerns about social media. Say that.
And actually, it was Kemi Badenoch, the Equalities Minister, who spoke out when she said, actually, lay off. The person who's politicised this is Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Of course, remember, the Prime Minister is going to be with us on GBNews on Monday for our People's Forum.
Because you'll be there, tell him to grow a pair.
And just briefly, the Commons leader, Penny Mordaunt, has said in the Commons today that the Prime Minister should reflect on his words. No, she should reflect on her words, because this is a woman who, as a minister, told the House of Commons, she used the expression, pregnant people. No, Penny Mordaunt, they're women. If you're pregnant, you're a woman. Do you need her to go to the same biology school as Keir Starmer? Clearly she does.
You can be pregnant and be a trans man born a woman. But it's all in the language, you see? And Penny Mordaunt said, I actually think it's wrong for Penny Mordaunt to say the Prime Minister needs to reflect on his words.
Well,
Very patronising.
She's thinking about the leadership campaign.
He's your boss, love. I can tell him to grow a pair.
Yeah.
But you can't really tell him to reflect on his words. Again, it's this... Why does nobody ever say what they believe in? Why do none of them just say clearly what their values are, what they believe in? And if they offend somebody, then that's sad, but I'm sure they don't mean to offend somebody.
Well,
but it's you take offence, you don't give it.
Politicians give offence to people all the time. That's part of the job.
So anyway, that was Keir Starmer, not Keir Starmer,
that was
Rishi
the Prime
Sunak,
Minister.
talking
Prime
this
Minister
morning
for now.
in reaction to the conversation he had yesterday with Keir Starmer, and he's slippery, isn't he?
11:17, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So after the break, we're going to be talking to a female farming family member, a farmer, Kelly. We're going to be talking about those protests across Europe and the state of British farming in this country. It's fascinating. Don't miss it. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, you know, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government, way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
11:21, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Now, dairy farmer Kelly Seaton says that she's concerned about whether her family farm will survive, and huge pressures that are currently on farmers. She's not alone. A recent survey shows a third of dairy farmers are considering quitting. This is, as we've seen, protests all over Europe as well from the farmers. Does the government need to do more? Well, I'm delighted to say that Kelly joins us now. From your farm, Kelly, I imagine. I think we've managed to get the Wi-Fi working where you are.
We have, yeah.
OK, super. Right, tell us what the issues are at the moment for British farmers and how they also relate to these issues we've seen across Europe.
I mean, the concerns differ from farm to farm, but for many, the same as homeowners across the country, interest rates are really crushing us. When you're trying to buy your farm, it's a real struggle because obviously it's exactly the same as homeowners, but much more money in and money out. We've matched this with the low milk price currently, which is relatively low compared to high input costs, and we've reached a perfect storm, quite frankly. Many farmers can earn more money from the new government incentive of sustainable farming incentive, which was put in place to try and replace the subsidies that we used to get from Europe, which was called BPS. The sustainable farming incentive is never going to match what we could have earned, or it was to subsidise low food retail price, really, but it's never going to match that, which is fine. But when we're now facing low milk prices, for example, we've really reached a perfect storm, again, adding in interest rates as well.
Tell us about the milk prices. What do farmers get for a pint? Would it work out for a pint of milk or 2 pints of milk compared to what the retailer charges?
So we get paid per litre. Right. So we're currently getting 36 pence per litre.
Gosh.
And our cost of production is 42 pence per litre, approximately.
So you're making a loss at the moment, effectively, and you feel like the government are not helping to subsidise you now that those EU subsidies have gone. Just talk a bit as well about these protests we've seen across Germany, Netherlands, Poland, France, Denmark. You know, we've seen them everywhere. There has been some success, haven't they? There have been some victories for those farmers, Kelly, at the moment. How have they managed to make that happen?
They've really put a lot of pressure on their government, and they have seen great success. At the moment, I don't foresee that UK farmers will be protesting. It's not really how the UK does do things. I think we need to raise a bit of awareness first and foremost, and that's how I've become involved in No Farmers, No Food, the campaign that you may have seen on X, which is gaining a great deal of traction and consumer support.
And Kelly, what about the idea of encouraging more people when they buy their food in a supermarket to look for the British label?
Absolutely. We have a fantastic system over here which does label British food. And I don't want this to become don't buy European food. Obviously, our European counterparts are suffering as much as we are at the moment. But ultimately, it's a bit dog eat dog at the moment. So yeah, we do need that support from the general public to really buy British food. But I don't want this to be a campaign to say buy British, buy British. We've heard that all before. We actually need fairer price structuring throughout the whole supply chain.
What time does your day start, Kelly? Because I assume farmers, it's an early start for you.
We start milking at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, my God.
And when do you turn in? When does your day end as farmers?
So our system is 3 times a day milking. So our cows are milked at 4:30 in the morning, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and again at 8 p.m. in the evening. We're very lucky. We have quite a lot of students coming from the local agricultural college that help us cover those night milking. So we do manage to get in usually around 6 o'clock at night.
Well, listen, we are grateful for all that you do, for all that British farmers do. We absolutely support you maintaining those farms. The future without you is unthinkable.
And I know you want to support your European farmers, but I'm encouraging people, buy British.
Yeah.
Look for the British label, buy British.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you so much. No farmers, no food is the campaign if you want to get involved. And in Europe, the EU have basically surrendered to farmers there. So they've given up on this 30% reduction in target of emissions. They're allowing more land for agricultural use, and they are agreeing to stop telling EU citizens to eat less meat. Because that is affecting them.
Aren't you flipping glad we left that ridiculous organisation?
Yeah,
telling people how much meat they should or shouldn't eat. It's outrageous.
Right, Nikki Hodgson, Carol Malone are also back in the studio with us. It's an issue, this, isn't it, Carol?
I do buy British when I can, but and Kelly's, just being said before there. I mean, I choked when I heard what they got for Parliament. So that's why I was making a noise. But she said, that it's we don't do things like they did over in France. Well, we should.
Yeah.
The British farmers should do that because it's the only way to make anyone take any notice.
That's right.
We were talking about this last week on the show. So I only realised how hard a farmer's life was. And I know this sounds trivial, but it's true. When I saw Clarkson's programme, and I realised the hours they work. I mean, the hours for her in a day, that is just astonishing.
4:30 in the morning.
4:30 till 6, 7, 8 at night. It's crazy, and that's
Yeah, I thought
And they're not making any money.
And they're not making
job.
any
It's nothing compared to that.
There's no social life, nothing after.
And they're losing money on every litre of milk they sell. They're losing money on it.
Yes. So why would they do it? Why on earth would they do it?
Right, shall we talk about the return of Boris Johnson to government, shall we?
It's the front page on the Daily Express today, written by Sam Lister, who was with us earlier. In a stunning move, Rishi Sunak has appeared to open the door for Boris Johnson's political comeback. Good.
Do you look forward to that, Nikki?
No, it's time for him to go. Shall we remind ourselves of what he did?
Yes.
I mean, prorogued Parliament, lied to the Queen. OK, what's the one good thing he did? Got the vaccine rollout straight. I mean, his lies are just
have an issue with that.
Lies upon lies upon lies. Exactly. If you don't feel positive about the vaccine, that's another issue. He really was never fit for office. He isn't fit for office now. Why have we got such short memories? Just leave him alone. Move on.
Because he's a fantastic campaigner.
Well, he's a good campaigner and he is charismatic.
But
whether
that
you
means
like him or
he's a
not,
salesman.
he's charismatic.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is not appropriate for public life when we require the highest of standards from people.
But he can sell the Tory policies better on the doorstep in the red wall than Rishi
Sunak. Well, then he should be a canvasser, but not.
Piers, why would he do that? Because he was stuffed up by various people in the cabinet here. Why on earth would he take to the streets of this?
Led by the Prime Minister.
Led by the Prime Minister. So why on earth would he take to the streets to try and save Rishi Sunak's backside? I can't see him doing it. He's making a lot of money now. He's making millions of pounds on the circuit for talking, whatever. So why would he do it? But the bottom line is the latest list of the most popular Conservatives, whether you like it or not, is Boris. He's number one.
Of course he is.
The poll last week said...
It is depressing.
It might be depressing, but that's what voters think. They didn't want to forgive him last year. They're ready to forgive him this year.
And we saw this week Liz Truss launching popular Conservatives, and she's the most unpopular.
And you know what? She's like something number 85 on that list. So why on earth would you bring her back? No one's listening to her anymore. But the bottom line is, Rishi's got to get real here. And I think this is why he's saying that the door was slightly ajar, though he hasn't quite said that. It's because he is not going to win the election the way things stand.
Now, where's this come from? This is an interview that Rishi Sunak has done, well, a fly on the wall documentary, actually. It's on the telly tonight. And it's actually our very own Sam Lister, who was here this morning, who spotted it in this documentary where he says he still talks to Boris, etc. Now, the fact that he's doing all of this PR, and we've got our lovely evening on Monday, and you can scan the code and you can talk to him yourself on GB News.
You'll both be glued to it, we know.
And the fact that he's doing this now, is he building up to a May election? It's very, because it's quite early. Do you not think this is quite early? If he wants to win them over by November.
October, November.
He's sowing seeds. They've got so much more work to do. They need to turn around, you know, the issues with boats. They've got to deal with
but the trouble is, if they wait till October and the boats are cascading across the channel all summer, Nikki, that's a real problem for the Prime Minister.
I think what they're thinking about is tax cuts. Will people feel better off in 6 months' time? And then will that be an optimal time to go to the polls?
I think that's logical, but there are these very strong rumours, and you adhere to this, don't you,
Andrew? I've got money.
When do you think
that it's May?
I think it's an outside possibility.
Well, they will be slaughtered if they do it in May, because he won't have begun to touch the immigration, one of the biggest problems that affects people. The economy won't, the tax cuts won't have kicked in at that point. So I don't understand the point. Have they all just given up, Piers? I think they have, you see.
Well, I mean, so many are standing down. We've seen it. And the 80th MP has now announced they're standing down at the next election.
It's shocking that the party that is ruling it appears just to have given up and accepted. You know, Keir Starmer, in any decent world, Keir Starmer's party would not win this election if we had a half-decent Tory party, not a good one, because the Labour are so bad.
No, I do agree, and I agree as somebody who's on the left, you know, somebody who would vote for Labour.
Are you disappointed with Starmer?
Yeah, very much. And I think this recent thing about them dropping the Green pledge is, unbelievable. It's the only good policy in that manifesto. It's the only strong, different thing that they've got going for themselves. Everything else is so weak. And, they're winning because the Tories are losing, not because they're winning.
So where would you go with your vote?
Well, this is really interesting. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say this on air, am I?
Yeah, you can,
Oh, it's not an election, so we're not influencing. OK. I don't know what I'm going to do with my vote. I always vote, because as a woman, it's extremely important to vote. Even if you go spoil your vote, go into the booth, you've got to do something. I have voted Green in the past. Don't massively have any faith in the Greens. Well, because they can't. But it's not. I mean, if I vote Green, it's not because I want them as the ruling party. It's because I'd like more representatives in Parliament.
But what you will get then is a coalition.
Reform,
You'll get a coalition.
I'm afraid Richard Tice would not have my vote. He's a pound shot Mosley by my thinking.
Spoiled ballot.
It might be a spoiled ballot, yeah. But I will always vote.
But it's not going to be Labour.
I don't know. I haven't decided. No, not Lib Dems after the U-turn on tuition fees. Never again.
See, I think Nikki won't be alone in this. I mean, I think there's a lot of people will do exactly what
I think you are very typical, Nikki. I am also
both main political parties. People feel homeless.
And do you know, I heard from someone the other night who knows about these things, who said that actually it's not Keir Starmer, that the Labour Party itself doesn't like Keir Starmer. They're sick of him. They think he's useless. That Rachel Reeves is running the party now.
Well, she's called the shots on this.
She's called the shots on the Green policy.
But Rachel Reeves, the woman who plagiarised all that work in her new book, so you know, not to be trusted.
That's who we're going to get.
Oh, it's a mess, isn't it? Right. Still to come this morning, thank you, ladies. An actress is suing Disney because she claims she was unfairly fired for her anti-trans and other social media posts. Elon Musk is funding that. Why? We're going to get stuck into that in just a moment. First, Sophia Wensler with your news.
Thanks, Bev. It's 11:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Armed police executed 2 warrants in Newcastle in the early hours of this morning at addresses associated with chemical attack suspect Abdul-Azidi. That's including his place of work. It's understood no arrests were made as the hunt for Azidi continues. He's believed to be suffering from severe facial injuries, which could be life-threatening if left untreated. The last recorded sighting of him was near Vauxhall Bridge in London just after 11 p.m. last Wednesday. Anyone with information should contact the police. The Prime Minister is understood to be very keen to meet the family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey. It comes as Rishi Sunak faces calls to apologise for making what Brianna's father described as a dehumanising remark in the Commons about transgender people. Commons leader Penny Mordaunt said today that the Prime Minister should reflect on his words, but Rishi Sunak says Sir Keir Starmer twisted his words.
Like everyone, I was completely shocked by Brianna's case. To have your child taken from you in such awful circumstances is almost impossible to come to terms with. To use that tragedy to detract from the very separate and clear point I was making about Keir Starmer's proven track record of multiple U-turns on major policies because he doesn't have a plan, I think is both sad and wrong, and it demonstrates the worst of politics.
Labour is to scale back its flagship Green Prosperity Plan in a major U-turn following months of uncertainty. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer will confirm the changes today, citing increased economic uncertainty since the policy was unveiled in 2021. Labour had planned to spend £28 billion every year on environmental projects. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said it was further evidence of the Labour leader's record on flip-flopping on major issues. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2615 and €1.174. The price of gold is £1,612.16 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,626 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
What you've got to do is, it's a collective. You've got to look like a meteorologist. Nobody out there is necessarily going to be a meteorologist, but what I do on a daily basis is I look globally. I look at what we've got in terms of the track of weather that we've had in the UK. So if you go back a couple of years and we go back to the heat wave of July, August 2022, 40.3 degrees, there's a dot in the landscape, and before then there was other incidents going on. Now that was a huge dot because that was extreme temperatures, and then we, since then, last summer, although we didn't get that kind of record, we saw months with records, various months, May and June and September and October, all-time records. So another dot, and then you're looking again globally. What's going on globally? What's going on in China, in USA, in Africa, now in Australia, for example, records falling like 9 pins. So when these storms come along, you've got to say, okay, would they have happened anyway? The answer is probably yes, they probably would have done. But when you start getting where we're up to with Jocelyn is number 10, then that's not the record. The record is 11. Named storms, 2015-16. So we've been there before, but only a few years ago. So these things are starting to mount up. And do you know what? On the can of climate change, climatologists, better people than me, people who study this expertly, and they look at it and they say, OK, what we're going to get with extra dimension of heat in the atmosphere, which energy and heat that basically means that you've got more intense storms potentially that can carry more water. What do you get? You get higher wind velocities and you get more water and or snow. We've just gone through a period where parts of this country have been deluged and flooded for the first time.
Yes. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:38. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Panel still here.
We got Carol Malone and Nikki Hodgson in the studio. Now, I read this story, first of all, as thin air as opposed to fin air, Carol. But why is that appropriate? What has this airline done?
So Finnair has announced it's going to start weighing passengers when they check in. They're not just going to weigh their luggage, they're going to weigh them. Now, you see, well, I was like you, and I thought, oh, God, that's going to cause trouble. And, of course, immediately on Twitter, everyone's shouting, fat-shaming airline, never fly Finnair again. However, when you drill in, it's a perfectly sensible thing to do. You know, you've got to know what weight is on your plane. And because 60% of the population are obese in some way, shape or form, you've got to know what's getting on your plane. And those little things, they're budget airlines, so they're quite light planes. So you need to know. And it's going to be done very discreetly. They're going to take you away. And they're not going to get a megaphone and go,
how can it be
so
we've got a big one here.
15, exactly.
Are they going to weigh everybody or people who they think may tip the scales?
No, I think they're getting a complete package for the entity, so your weight and your baggage. But, you know, they're not going to announce it to the airport. As Bev says, they're not going to show we've got a big...
Put that one at the front and put that one at the back, and then it'll be balanced.
But what's the point? Are they going to charge you more depending on your weight?
No, they're going to charge... It's because a plane can only take so much weight. Now, in the past, they've done it on an average. Whereas because the population is rocketing in weight now, you can't do that average anymore. So you've got to know what weight you're carrying. And I don't... The mad people on Twitter, the hysterics who are shouting fat shaming, do they care about being offended, or do they care about living...
Falling out the sky?
Falling out of the sky.
So this will mean some people won't be able to get on the plane because they're over the weight limit?
No, it's just to chart the weight. So they're not going to stop you from getting on the plane. They just want to know what the overall weight...
They will eventually.
Go on, Nikki.
Well, it's complicated, isn't it? I think about this from the point of view of being anorexic when I was a teenager. And the idea of getting weighed in any capacity would have been really difficult. In fact, actually, when I was pregnant, I really struggled with those feelings coming back up because I put on so much weight when I was pregnant. It's just sometimes you just do. And the staff in the hospital said, don't weigh yourself because you don't need to see it, because it's kind of when you end up down this path of restricting your eating again. But that said, that's a very small number of people that have those problems. And I do think there probably should be an exemption for pregnant women, though, because actually, thinking about your luggage and how much stuff you have to take around with you when you're pregnant, especially if you're about to have a baby, I think that should be a little caveat. But broadly, I do agree with it, especially as a small person, because it's like, I've got loads of shoes, I want to put another pair of shoes in because,
I wonder if it would morph, though, into the time when larger people, in order to get an average weight, have to take less baggage, and a slighter person can take a big bag of clothes.
I mean, having been very fat and very thin and something in between all of my life, I mean, I feel I can talk about obesity in a good way. I know that when I was really big and I sat on a plane, my bum would barely fit in the seat. I could tell the person next to me was a bit hacked off because they didn't have as much space as they should have done.
So you come and think, I hope she's not going to sit next to me.
Yes. So, I mean, I think, planes have to change generally. They've got to have some bigger seats for people, all the rest of it. But I think this is a really good safety measure. We've got to stop being scared of using the word. I mean, Nikki and I were just talking about this outside. We're frightened to use the word fat now in case it offends people. Well, get over it. If you're that offended by it...
But obese is extreme fat. But we're allowed to use the word obese. 60%
of the population's obese, but obese makes it sound like it's an illness, whereas fat makes it sound like it's
something you can do about it, right?
And it's that's the issue. It's very difficult. It's very much person to person what somebody's weight issues are, psychologically as well as physically. Sometimes people are taking steroid medication. It's made them put loads of weight on. There's loads of different reasons for why somebody is heavier than somebody else. I do notice with my little girl, in all her little books, she's got a book of opposites, the word fat isn't there. They use the word large now. We and Carol were saying, you're seeing the word fat just expunged from the English language.
Do you think the word fat should be in there?
I don't know. I feel very conflicted about it because of having had eating issues in the past. But you've got to be able to use a descriptive word, haven't you, to describe something that's...
But again, eating issues are more complicated than that.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
That's so much more psychologically difficult than somebody
anorexia is a lot about control. It's a lot about family relationship things going wrong. It's not just about wanting to fit.
But large can be broad. It can be tall. Whereas fat is very specific.
Fat is very specific, and also we've got to talk about it. I think the reason we are unable to talk about it now is one of the reasons it's rocketing. Because we're terrified. Doctors are frightened to say to a person that comes into their surgery, you are overweight, you are fat, and you have to lose it. Otherwise, your health is in danger. People are frightened to say that.
Did they ever say it to you when you were in your big days?
Oh God, yeah. My doctor. Every time I went for my knees about a year and a half ago, and the guy there said, "Can I just say, if you lost 5% of your body weight, you'd be in 30% less pain in your knees." And I said to him, "You just made that up. It's tosh." It wasn't tosh. I don't have any pain in my knees anymore. So I think people, we've got to confront them with it, otherwise their lives are never going to get any better. Don't be offended. Be motivated by it.
But the one thing I always say is with children, because children are so sensitive. Like, I remember as a little girl at ballet being told I had fat legs when I was probably 7 years old, gave me a complex forever.
Who told you that?
the ballet teacher.
Oh, people did that then. People did.
In the 80s and 90s, that's how they talk to you. But what I'm trying to say is we've got to be so careful with children. Children, we've got to kind of protect a bit more, but also tackle childhood obesity at the same time. So, very complicated.
OK, right, thank you both. We've got to take another quick break. We're going to be talking to an anti-racism campaigner about those leaked Disney diversity rules. Half the main characters have to be from minority backgrounds. Half the staff have to be from minority backgrounds. Oh, we'll find out in just a moment. We keep watching this programme, Andrew Pierce. It's very good. Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back, 11:47. Now, actress Gina Carano is suing Disney and Lucasfilm over her firing from the TV show The Mandalorian. She's got help from Elon Musk.
So Gina, who played Cara Dune in the Star Wars series, claims she was dismissed because of her social media posts that were regarded by Disney as anti-trans.
That's right. Lucasfilm and Disney are yet to make a statement, but this has opened a whole can of worms about Disney's recruiting process and their diversity policy. So we're joined in the studio now by anti-racism activist Iman Aitan. Iman, great to see you.
Hello, good to see you.
So this story is massive online. I think it's about to hit the mainstream press as well, because it's raised this idea of effectively inclusion standards at Disney and what we would have once called positive discrimination. Is that a good thing to have targets for people of ethnic diverse minorities in employment?
OK, well, firstly, positive discrimination is inaccurate. Positive discrimination is against the law under the Equalities Act of 2010. It's actually referred to as positive action provisions, and that's basically exceptions to the usual requirements of discrimination in law. And they can only be implemented when you follow three strict criteria. Firstly, if one of the cohorts within the protected characteristics suffers a disadvantage due to their protected characteristics. Second is if there is a disproportionate lack of participation within a particular area within an organisation. At that point, they can implement positive action. And last but not least, if there are specific needs. I'll give you an example. If an organisation realises that their building isn't necessarily accessible for those that are disabled, they might decide to spend a 250k on making their building more accessible to those that are in a wheelchair. And that potentially means that people like me and you don't get any money. And in fact, we might actually be at a disadvantage because the money that we have is taken away. Right. But the reason why they're doing that is because they've realised that Bev can walk around freely. Yeah. Andrew can walk around freely. Iman, Aiton can walk around freely. But Sally, unfortunately, who's in the wheelchair, she can't. So therefore, in order to make it fair, equal, for Sally in the wheelchair, we're going to do positive action provisions. So 3 strict criteria. So in terms of what you just said, positive discrimination is against the law. And in terms of, I just wanted to make one more point. We're talking about tick boxing here. This is ultimately where you're going with this question. Is it okay to tick box for black people, for those that represent LGBTQ+? And I will say this. Tick boxing, every process and procedure in your life is governed by tick boxing. Let me just be clear. The minute you start school, Bev, primary school, your teacher does the register, she organises the lesson plan, all of which are based off of a tick box exercise. The minute you decide you want to go for a job, you want to go into higher education, you want to get a car, you want to get a mortgage, you want to be on live TV. You've got to fit a certain criteria, guys. That's called a tick box exercise. So basically, moral of the tale is, if you ever want to execute anything properly in life, Bev and Andrew, what happens in that process? Automatically turns into a tick box exercise. That's just how it is. So let's not separate it. This is life. Tick box.
I think that is a bit different, actually. And if you look at Disney's, if you look at Disney's inclusion standards. No, because actually, in defence of what you're saying, I don't think a box, well, I'm a woman, you are a gay man. In that respect, maybe we tick boxes.
But in terms of employment, you were employed based off a tick box. Just forget women.
I disagree.
You are based off your... OK, so forget the 9 protected characteristics. I really want to talk to you right now. Forget the 9 protected characteristics. Forget EDI. Just based off of your criteria. They need to make sure that you had the provenance. They need to make sure that you had done this job before. They need to make sure that they had tested you. This is a tick box. Someone has a sheet that says, you know what, did Bev pass the audition? Is Bev impartial? Is Bev this? Is Bev that? Is Bev this? Is Andrew that? Tick box, tick box, tick box. And yet we've decided that EDI tick box should be different.
So that's equality, diversity and inclusion, to be using the phrase EDI.
All of it for recruitment is tick box.
Disney's inclusion standards then say that on-screen representation, characters on screen, 50% or more of regular and recurring characters must be from underrepresented
tick box.
Groups.
Yeah, that's a tick box. You want to execute something properly. OK, in fact, let me...
Well, it's the same with creative leadership. Same with, like, all the people who work there. They want 50% are from underrepresented groups.
Guidelines.
But why does that lead... Where does that leave people who aren't in those underrepresented groups?
It looks after all of us, and this is what I get annoyed about. Is when we talk about EDI, we act as if it's just because we know it to be 9 protected characteristics. What we fail to appreciate is actually it incorporates every single human being in England, every type of person. All that they've done is put everyone into 9 characteristics. So whether that be gender, whether that be race, whether that be sexual orientation, whether that be maternity and pregnancy, everyone has been put into a characteristic. So moral of the tale is everyone has been looked after, and the reason why we have the tick box is just to ensure that everyone is continuously looked after.
If it is so benevolent, why has somebody like Elon Musk put his weight behind this?
Oh, his warped idea of DEI. This is what's happening. He has a very warped idea.
How is it warped? Because what he's saying is stop judging people by these immutable characteristics and judge them on the quality of the job that they perform.
Oh, isn't that interesting? And this is what my issue has been. This is what so many black people's issue has been. This is what so many LGBTQ+ issues has been. The reality is, I'll give you an example, just so I don't kind of go off on a tangent because I could talk for days. I'll give you an example. So in 2009, DWP did a report. Thank you very much. They did a report into racial harassment within recruitment. And this was 1 year before the Equalities Act. So the Equalities Act of 2010, we had this report in 2009. Moral of the tale is they realised that white people had to send out 9 applications in order to be successful, whereas black people had to send out 16. So moral of the tale, the discrimination, the racism already took place. And the Equalities Act is there to rectify that issue. And it's only like people like Elon Musk with his rich white self, and I'll say it as it is, rich and white, isn't necessarily privy to me and my kind of issues as a black woman from South East London.
And we've run out of time, Iman. And like you said, you are a good talker. Come back again another day and we'll finish this conversation. We have got to move on. That's it from us for this week, even. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. Stop packing your bag, Andrew Pierce. We'll see you tomorrow.
You put your 28 billion in, you take your 28 billion out. In, out, shake it all about. Keir Starmer's doing the hokey-cokey with the public finances, but where will he end up? We'll have the details.
And is the countryside racist? Apparently that's what wildlife charities believe. It's a white, racist colonial space. So there you go. Is that true? We'll be discussing all of that and more after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty going on with the weather today. A wet one out there for most, and some heavy snow continuing to fall, particularly over the hills across North Wales and northern England. Low pressure's been moving up from the south, bringing the moisture, hitting the cold air, and particularly on this weather front, bringing a mixture of rain, sleet and hill snow. And still heavy snow still to come through this afternoon over parts of North Wales and the hills and mountains of northern England. Some treacherous conditions on some of the higher routes here. Elsewhere, mostly rain across the south, some heavy bursts of rain, but some drier interludes as well. But as the wet weather moves across Northern Ireland, some sleet and snow likely here and into southernmost parts of Scotland. So snow and ice warnings remain in place overnight. The amber warning across northern England until this evening. Further pulses of heavy rain then coming up across parts of the south. Gusty winds as well, but big temperature contrasts. Feeling cold through the day and night under this band of wet weather that just persists. Very cold again across northern Scotland, but largely dry, very mild in the south with double digits on offer here. The wet weather continues to track into southern Scotland into Friday, so snow and ice warnings in place here, turning milder though slowly but surely over northern England and northern Ireland, so the hill snow risk disappearing by the time we get to Friday. But blustery conditions coming in from the east, again very mild in the south, cold further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Lots of people very concerned about what's happening in the Middle East. Iran obviously denying it, but the next move from the United States, our key allies, will be absolutely key.
Absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of talk about where this could go, whether the situation could be escalated. But I think the chatter is heading in the right direction, which is about de-escalation. So if there are going to be targeted sanctions against Iran, that's already happened through expelling certain diplomats and